Am I the a-hole for being vindictive towards my cheating boyfriend? My boyfriend of almost 6 years was caught cheating. Again. I know. I know most people would say I should have left the first time, and they wouldn't be wrong. I tell myself that every day. But relationships are complicated when you've built a life around someone. Shared routines, inside jokes, holidays with families. Plans that felt real at the time. Walking away the first time felt impossible. So I stayed. Over the years, there were red flags I convinced myself weren't deal breakers. I found sex chats. I found evidence of extreme porn consumption that made me uncomfortable. I had that constant pit in my stomach that something wasn't right. But every time I brought things up, he'd apologize, promise to change, act devastated at the thought of losing me, and I'd fold. Around Thanksgiving, I found out he had been with another woman. Then just a week ago, I learned he had gone out with her again and gone back to her apartment. That detail hit differently. The repetition, the casualness of it. Something in me finally snapped. I was upset, yes, distraught, but not surprised. And maybe that's the saddest part. My shock had run out a long time ago. In that emotional spiral, I did something impulsive. A guy who had asked me out months ago, back when I declined because I was happily taken, had recently reached out. I told him I wasn't looking for anything serious, and we made plans to go on a date. It felt reckless and freeing at the same time. While my ex and I were still texting back and forth, I told him, I'm going to drop off the rest of your stuff on my way to my date. He completely lost it. Suddenly he was the one devastated. He kept texting about how sad he was, how he couldn't stand the thought of me with someone else, asking if I was really going to do it. I said yes. I even alluded to the possibility that if things led to sex, I wouldn't stop it. Watching him unravel felt darkly satisfying. He blew up my phone the entire evening. My date ended up being just that, a date. No sex, nothing physical beyond some light flirting and conversation. But I never told my ex that. I let him sit with the image he had created in his mind. I have no intention of getting back with him. The camel's back is broken. But I can't deny that part of me wanted him to feel even a fraction of the anxiety, jealousy, and betrayal I lived with for years. Maybe it was vindictive. Maybe it was extreme. Or maybe it was the first time I stopped protecting his feelings at the expense of my own. Edit to add. All of the back and forth was prior to the date. The evening of the date, he texted me, "Please don't do this, I messed up." To which I replied, "Okay," and blocked him on all means of communication with me. It was not an after-the-fact baiting, but more of the last word. Now for the top comments before reading the mini update. You did what felt right, giving him a taste of what he put you through. You've dropped off his things and have no intention of going back. Go no contact. Full-on block him everywhere. Good for you. Happier New Year. Exactly. Thank you. Petty, but he is your ex now. Good for you. Don't need to explain a thing to him now. Move on. Take things back and forget his cheating butt. Wish you the best, girl. Funny how the cheaters always melt down when their ex moves on with someone else. They can't stand not having someone they want, and it doesn't matter to them whether they're in a relationship or not. I had a coworker who I knew was cheating on his wife. At a conference, he was talking about some woman he was planning on hooking up with that night at the hotel. So I replied, "Isn't it neat that while you're here in this hotel hooking up with someone, your wife is probably home hooking up with someone else?" He did not like that. They can't justify why it's okay for them to cheat, but not okay for their partner. Now, of course, I have no reason to believe she was cheating. They were divorced within a year, so I'm guessing she figured it out. I had no way to contact her, or I would have been the first one to tell her. Now for the mini update. Thanks all. I have no intentions of contacting him anymore. He is blocked. When I say the camel's back is broken, it is. I felt I needed to reciprocate what was inflicted, but don't apply that concept to mundane or everyday interactions, to those that think I am an a-hole. Unhealthy to feel some satisfaction from it, sure, but not making it an ongoing consumption. I feel pretty content and optimistic about where I am going from here. I will focus on myself and my life. And the guy I went on the date with is aware of circumstances, and we agreed to foster a friendship and go with the flow. Next story. Am I overreacting for calling a divorce attorney after my husband lied about who he was with? I, 37 female, just need unbiased opinions. My husband, 37 male, asked me 2 weeks ago if he could go camping this past weekend with a friend and his brother. He asked via text, so I know I'm not remembering incorrectly. I said I didn't know because our 5-year-old daughter had a cheer competition, and I'd prefer not to drag our 6-year-old son along for such a long day. He offered to arrange a sitter, but I still wasn't happy because the competition was early and close to our house. Getting her up and ready is already a pain. Adding in driving our son to a sitter would just make the morning even more stressful. When we found out she had a later performance time, he decided to go. He said he was going with his brother because the friend couldn't go. Wednesday night before he left, he specifically said he was nervous about the Verizon outages because he and his brother both have Verizon and were hoping they wouldn't lose access to GPS. Thursday morning, he texted that he made it to the campsite safely. I didn't hear from him again. By Friday at noon, I reached out to make sure he was alive. He usually texts me daily check-ins when camping. I got no response. By 6 p.m., I was nervous and texted my sister-in-law to see if my brother-in-law had been able to contact her. That's when she replied, "Ma'am, what are you talking about? My husband is on the couch next to me." I saw red. In my mind, my husband was still camping, but had used his brother as a manipulative tool because he assumed I wouldn't want to ruin his good time. For some background, we have young kids who need a lot of attention. I work full-time and manage basically everything for the kids. He works a swing shift and is gone 14 hours a day on work days. I'm constantly juggling everything alone, so it really sucks when he finally has time off and actively chooses to spend it detached and unhelpful in every way. Saturday, he finally texted that he had service again and was coming home. I ignored the text. He called, but I was driving with our daughter in the car, so taking a call wasn't appropriate. When I could, I texted him and called him out on his lie. He doubled down and said he didn't lie. It was a change in plans because by the time he knew our daughter's start time was late enough for him to go, it was too late to invite his brother. It's now Monday. He's been living out of our basement or at work and hasn't tried to talk to me at all. Instead, he's taking the stance that he's mad at me for being mad. In my opinion, he lied to me. He manipulated me. Instead of apologizing when he was caught, he doubled down and is now using my anger against me. The fact is, I no longer trust him and have contacted an attorney. So, am I overreacting? Now for the top comments before reading the update. He built in the Verizon comments so he could turn his phone off. He was not alone. Sorry. Yeah, the Verizon thing up front was so sus it's insane. I'm sure she could also check with Verizon to see when the last service outage was. If it wasn't on the day he said, that would be double confirmation for you. Stay strong, OP. Don't let him gaslight you. Can you access his bank records? See if there are any unusual charges leading up to the trip. Maybe he didn't even camp, because who goes alone? Also, who was the nameless friend? I'd check with the brother-in-law, or better yet, the sister-in-law, to see if they even knew about a camping trip. Not overreacting. You've got to protect yourself at the end of the day. If there's a chance he's cheating, you're one step ahead, and there's nothing wrong with that. He clearly lied and is now gaslighting you and faulting you for having a completely appropriate response to the situation. It makes no sense that it was too late to invite his brother when, at the time he left, he told you it was the friend who wasn't joining, not his brother. Sorry you're having to deal with this. I hope you can get him to admit what really went on soon. I'll add that even if he was fully alone and nothing happened at all, he could have tried to understand where you were coming from instead of getting angry with you and making you even more suspicious. Thank you. I do truly believe that he just went by himself, but his brother had no idea about any of it, so it was never discussed with him. And it bothers me so much that he went out of his way the night before to bring up, "Yeah, we both have Verizon," when he knew damn well his brother wasn't going with him. At any point, he could have said the plans changed, but he stuck with his lie because it was part of his manipulation. It just sounds so stupid that I'm going to risk not spending future holidays with my kids because he went camping alone and not with his brother like he said. I know it's deeper and more than that, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it. Now for the update. I know this isn't the update any of you want, but it's the update you get. He was truly camping alone in the woods. He truly had no service. He did mention it beforehand specifically because we were both in SOS mode all day the Tuesday before he left due to the Verizon nationwide outage. For everyone who thinks I'm a naive moron, okay. For everyone who thinks he just needed a break from the pressures of a high-stakes job and 2 young kids, let me tell you, this man has felt zero stress from having 2 young kids. I do their homework with them. I do the bedtime routine. I register them for everything. I take them to all practices and performances. I coach when it's a sport I'm familiar with. I volunteer at their school and at every event I can, before they're old enough that my face there will be more humiliating than helpful. I mow the lawn. I shovel the snow. When the sink leaked, I fixed it. There isn't a honey-do list here that I'm not already covering. I told him I contacted an attorney. He had no reply. The next day, he asked if we could talk. He admitted that he's been a really crappy partner and dad for the past 2 years. He cited very specific examples of being a crappy dad. Not knowing our son's teacher's name, never seeing a single performance from our daughter in cheer or dance. Calm down, they're just recitals, not competitive cheer or dance. I can't imagine how mad some of you would be if you thought she was. Not doing anything around the house. Constantly being mad at me for having emotions and punishing me for anything he viewed as an indiscretion by ignoring me for a week until he decided enough time had passed and resurfaced pretending everything was fine. Not one apology. Not one thank you for taking such good care of my family while he wasn't there mentally. No request for therapy, which I was grateful for. Since the last time he requested therapy, he attended every session stone-faced and gave me no response afterward. Even when I begged for acknowledgement of anything I said. Anyway, wish me luck with the rest of my life. I will never be with a man ever again. 0 out of 5 stars. Do not recommend. Last story. Am I the a-hole for canceling a date over the location? I, 28 female, recently canceled a second date with someone, 38 male, because it felt like a test on his end to see how much I would tolerate in the future. I'm wondering if I was too harsh. We met on a dating app and went out for coffee. We made loose plans for dinner the following week, and he specifically said dinner several times. When we were discussing the dinner plans over the next few days, he seemed to want to be the one to do the actual planning. I was fine with that. I find it rare for potential partners to take initiative with planning these days, so I was actually excited. He asked if I had any dietary restrictions, and I let him know that I have only 2 major requirements. I don't eat red meat, and I do not drink as I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have almost 2 years sober, and we discussed at length during our first date what we're both comfortable with in terms of substance use. I told him directly that I don't mind if a date has a drink with dinner, but that I will never touch alcohol again. I also stressed that I'm absolutely not a picky eater and truly love all forms of cuisine. I just can't eat red meat for both health and personal reasons. I have a history of cardiac illness and have been advised to stick to poultry and fish. The night before the date, he told me that he'd made a reservation at a place I hadn't heard of. I looked it up and texted him a link asking if I had the correct place because it was a cocktail lounge. He replied that it was correct and said he liked their small bites menu. I checked the menu and there were only a few options. A meat and cheese board with only 2 cheeses and 4 meats. No substitutions allowed. A pepperoni pizza, a burger, and a cheese pizza. I wasn't extremely upset, but I was confused that it was a cocktail lounge with only one option I could eat. While I was still looking at the menu, he texted again and said he thought we could go to the lounge for dinner and then head to a nearby art-themed bar for a nightcap. At that point, I was honestly pretty confused. Neither location was truly a restaurant, they were bars, and he was fully aware that I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm genuinely okay with restaurants that have alcohol options, but I was honestly a little gobsmacked at the suggestion of 2 bars. Not restaurants with alcohol options, bars. I decided to take the evening to think about it, but the next day I texted him and said that I didn't think moving forward with a date was a good idea. My gut instinct was that if he chose a date location that violated the only 2 restrictions I gave, it was a test to see how much I'd put aside my wants and needs in the future. We live in a major city, and I want to stress that there are hundreds of incredible food options here. I would have been fine with almost anything else that was restaurant-focused and had a couple of non-red meat options. It was the fact that both places he chose were strictly bars, and the food they offered left me with a single option. He responded strangely after I told him I didn't think we were a good match. He said, "We'll leave it at that, peace," and nothing else. Now I'm doubting myself. My friends have said I'm not crazy for thinking the choices were strange at best and inconsiderate or intentional at worst. But I wanted objective opinions from people I don't know. What do we think, Reddit? Was this actually a red flag, or am I overreacting? For what it's worth, I'm not desperate to date or have a partner. I own a successful small business, have a fantastic group of friends, several hobbies I'm dedicated to, and my own home. I'm in no rush to settle down, especially for the wrong person. Not the a-hole. You were entirely correct. He was testing or taunting you. You gave 2 basic restrictions, and he went out of his way to plan a date that not only ignored both, but blatantly did everything possible to violate those preferences. I think his response shows that he realized his idea backfired and that there was no way to justify it. Or he was talking to multiple women and couldn't be bothered to keep them straight. Not the a-hole. As a recovering alcoholic myself, I would have been insulted by these choices. Always follow your gut instinct because it's usually right. I think there's a possibility this guy wasn't as interested in you as you may have been in him originally. If he were interested, those 2 choices would have never been on his radar. Great job avoiding a disaster. I was honestly not interested from the get-go, but because he texted me several times about going out, I was willing to give it a try. He'd said a couple of other things that concerned me on the first coffee date, so I was already feeling unsure, but that interaction really sealed the deal. What else did he say? Just little things here and there that make me anxious when anyone says them. Stuff like, "It's hard to find women like you." It's not. I am as generic and hard-toe white woman as it gets. He also said something about how a lot of people bore him, and reiterated that he thought this could work out a couple of times within 2 hours of meeting each other. The issue is that I've definitely had some trauma with dating, and I can't always tell if I'm being extra sensitive or dramatic because of that trauma, or if it's genuinely a massive red flag.